There is a world far from Earth, a place so ancient and strange that even stars seem to whisper about it. This is the universe of Warhammer 40,000, a place of vast armies and endless war. But within this harsh galaxy lies a secret so deep and painful that it has lasted for over 10,000 years. It belongs to the Dark Angels. They are one of the oldest and proudest Space Marine chapters, but they carry something no one else can see, something heavy, something they never speak of aloud. This story is not about loud battles or great victories. It is a slow and quiet journey through memory, silence, and guilt. It is a story about a home lost and a truth buried. We will walk through foggy forests, dark halls, and distant stars. We will learn about the lion, his rise, and the sorrow that followed. We will see how one mistake became a curse, stretching across the ages. And slowly, gently, we will uncover why the Dark Angels are never at peace. Let your thoughts drift now. Let the roar of war become a soft hum far away. We are going to begin where the first shadow fell. Before we go deeper, it helps to understand how Space Marines came to be. Long ago, the Emperor of Mankind ruled from Terra, which we once called Earth. He was not like other men. He was stronger, wiser, and far older than most could imagine. To lead his armies, he created 20 superhuman sons, called primarchs. Each was sent across the galaxy by fate and storm. One of them landed on a dark world named Caliban. This son was named Lion L. Johnson. The lion was not born like other children. He came from the stars, hidden in a glowing pod. He landed deep in the wild forests of Caliban, where twisted beasts roamed and danger waited at every turn. The lion grew fast and strong, but more than that, he was clever, quiet, and fearless. He did not need guidance. He shaped his own path and learned to hunt the terrible monsters of the woods. When he met the Knights of Caliban, he changed their ways. And when the Emperor finally found him, he was already a leader. The Emperor gave the lion command over a mighty force called the Dark Angels Legion. These were Space Marines, soldiers of great power and discipline. Some came from Terra and others from Caliban itself. The lion took them into the stars to fight in a war called the Great Crusade. They were meant to bring peace and unity, but the galaxy had other plans. There were many battles, many victories, but behind it all, something was beginning to break. In the shadow of that pride, something older and darker stirred, something that would not remain hidden forever. Now, let us begin. Long ago, before most worlds in the Imperium even knew the name of Terra, there was a planet called Caliban. It was a quiet world, but not a peaceful one. Thick forests covered the land, and inside those forests lived monsters. These creatures were not like wild animals or simple beasts. They were twisted things, shaped by old powers, and no one knew where they came from. They stalked through the trees with eyes like flame and claws that tore through steel. For the people of Caliban, life was a long struggle just to survive. The forests were deep and dark, but not empty. Small pockets of civilization had grown around tall stone keeps and heavy iron gates. These keeps were guarded by knights, proud warriors who followed codes of honor and loyalty. They called themselves the Orders. Each order trained in swordplay, hunting, and defense against the creatures of the wild. They believed in duty and sacrifice, though few ever made it to old age. Among these orders was one that stood above the rest. It was simply called the Order. They lived with discipline. They showed no fear. They held their ground even when the monsters came in numbers too great to count. The Order kept its traditions clear, but it was always searching for new strength. And one day, that strength arrived. A bright object fell from the sky, crossing over mountains and trees, before crashing into the deep heart of the forest. No one saw the object fall, but the trees whispered afterward, and the beasts grew quiet. In the center of the crater was a pod, smooth and cold, shaped like nothing on Caliban. From this pod came a child, alone, without memory or name. He wandered the woods in silence, learning the ways of the land. He saw beasts, fought them, and survived when no other child ever could. Years passed. He grew faster than a normal boy, stronger too. His body became that of a man long before he should have reached that age. He taught himself to read the signs of the forest, to hear the patterns in the wind, and to move like the shadow of a tree. When the Order found him at last, they expected madness. Instead, they found calm. The boy had no name, but he was not wild. He was serious, silent, and full of hidden power. They gave him a name from one of their oldest tales, Lion L. Johnson. It meant the lion, son of the forest. And from that moment, everything began to change. The lion joined the Order not as a servant or student, but as an equal. Though young, he soon passed all the trials. Older knights watched with wide eyes as he broke the rules of battle and reshaped them into something stronger. He taught the Order how to track better, fight smarter, and strike harder. What had once been tradition began to evolve. Within a few years, the lion led not just a squad but the entire Order. And the Order began to lead the other knightly houses, one by one. The lion did not waste time. He pushed the knights to clean the forests, to hunt the great beasts with new force and new fire. The people of Caliban began to hope that maybe, at last, the monsters would be gone. Whole regions of land were taken back. Villages grew. Light returned to places that had only known fear. But the lion was not celebrated with songs or praise. He kept to his duties and looked always to the edges of the forests, where danger still waited. He trusted his second-in-command, a man named Luther, with many of the decisions outside battle. Luther was older, wiser in the ways of people, and the two worked well together. Time passed, and then the skies changed. One day, without warning, great ships appeared in orbit. The stars above Caliban shifted, and fire trails marked the skies. The Emperor of mankind had come. He had finally found one of his lost sons. The lion did not kneel or question. He knew who the Emperor was the moment he saw him. It was not just a father, but a creator. The lion had never known where he came from until that day, but he understood everything now. The Emperor gave him command of the First Legion, a powerful force of space marines known as the Dark Angels. These warriors were already legends across hundreds of worlds. Some had come from Terra, from the early years of the Crusade. Now, with Caliban open to recruitment, the Legion would grow stronger. The Lion would take the best of the knightly orders and forge them into space marines. They would be reshaped, trained, and given armor that could turn aside laser fire. The monsters of the forest were no longer their enemies. Now the entire galaxy waited. The Lion and Luther were both made generals, but there was a difference between them. The Lion had something in his blood that matched the stars. He was more than human. Luther, while strong and skilled, remained a man. The Emperor saw this and quietly left Luther on Caliban to oversee the planet. The Lion, however, would take his new warriors into the sky. As the Dark Angels lifted off and began their march into the wider galaxy, many on Caliban watched with mixed feelings. Some felt pride, others fear. Luther stood on the edge of the new fortress monastery and looked to the stars. He had served with honor. He had helped shape the Lion's rule. But now, he was being left behind. The Lion never said why. He did not need to. His silence spoke clearly. So began a journey that would stretch across worlds and through time. The Dark Angels would earn glory in many battles, and the Lion would stand beside his brothers, the other Primarchs. But back on Caliban, something had been left behind. A quiet crack, invisible at first, small enough to ignore. But over time, even the smallest break can grow. Now let us drift forward, not too far, just enough to see what happens when pride and distance begin to pull old friendships apart. The Emperor's light had reached Caliban, but shadows still lived under the trees. As the Lion stepped into the stars, Caliban remained behind, like a dream half forgotten. Its forests still moved in the wind, its towers still stood firm, and the people still lived their lives in the shadow of memories. But now the planet served a higher cause. It was no longer a dark place alone in the stars. It had become part of something vast, something burning with light and purpose. It had become a world of the Imperium of Man. The Imperium was not gentle. It was built to bring order to a broken galaxy. Worlds had scattered after the age of old machines had fallen. Strange empires rose in the ruins. War had spread between systems. The Great Crusade was made to fix what had fallen apart. It was not led by simple rulers or cold machines. It was led by the Emperor and his sons. These were the Primarchs, each one made with great care and secret science. They were meant to be leaders, warriors, and symbols all at once. When the Emperor found the Lion, the legion he gave him had already fought on 100 worlds. They were known as the First Legion, and their armor was dark like old stone. They carried heavy blades and moved without fear. But they were not whole. They had lost part of themselves long ago when the Primarchs were scattered. Now, with the Lion in command, the Legion became complete again. Their father had returned. Their purpose was clear. The Lion did not waste time. He took the Legion into the stars and began to shape it in his image. The discipline of Caliban, the methods of the hunt, and the pride of the knightly orders all became part of the Legion's heart. Recruits from Caliban were trained and tested, and those who passed were made into Astartes. They became tall, strong, and nearly unbreakable. They were no longer men. They were Dark Angels. As the years moved forward, the Dark Angels became known across the stars. They arrived on worlds where law had been broken and rebuilt cities in silence. They moved like a blade in the dark, cutting through corruption and fear. The Lion led them with calm focus. He did not speak often, but when he did, his words were measured and clear. Other Primarchs began to notice his success. Some respected him, others questioned him. He had no need for approval. While the Lion marched forward, Luther remained on Caliban. The Emperor had left him there to guide the people and watch over the new fortress monastery. Luther accepted this role without protest, but over time, something began to shift. He had once fought beside the Lion as an equal. Now he was a governor, not a warrior. He walked through halls that echoed with absence. The others who had been left behind looked to him, and their voices grew restless. Many of these men had once been knights. They had been heroes on Caliban, but now they trained recruits, read reports, and managed supplies. It felt less like honor and more like waiting. Some began to speak in private, asking why the Lion had gone without them. Others wondered if they had been judged and found lacking. These thoughts were not spoken aloud in the open, but they spread through the cracks like water in stone. Luther kept a calm face, but his heart grew heavier. He still believed in the Emperor, still respected the Lion, but he could not shake the feeling that he had been pushed aside. He had always believed that they would rise together. Now one led a legion across the stars, while the other watched over forests and stone. He did his duty well. Caliban remained strong, its defenses sharpened, its training refined. But in the quiet moments, when the halls grew still and the fires burned low, the silence began to speak. Out in the galaxy, the dark angels were changing. The Terran-born warriors, those from the earliest days of the Legion, began to die in greater numbers. The new recruits, the ones raised on Caliban, were now the backbone of the force. They brought with them new ideas, shaped by the Order and the teachings of the Lion. The Legion's culture began to shift. It became more secretive, more ritualistic. Ranks formed within ranks. Trust became something earned only through deeper trials. Other Primarchs noticed the change but said little. Each legion had its own way, and the Dark Angels were not the only ones with hidden customs. The galaxy was full of strange powers and broken empires. Some worlds welcomed the Imperium with open hands. Others fought to the last breath. The Lion led his warriors through it all with a clear goal in mind. He was not interested in glory or praise. He wanted order. He wanted the Emperor's vision to be real. And yet, even as the Legion grew sharper and stronger, the space between Lion and Luther widened. Letters came less often. Reports were sent but rarely answered. Some said the Lion had no time for Caliban. Others whispered that he was ashamed of those left behind. The truth was not spoken, but it weighed heavily in every message left unread. Still, time moved forward. The Great Crusade did not stop. More Primarchs were found. Some became fast allies. Others clashed in bitter silence. The galaxy grew more complex, and the seeds of something darker began to take root. Not all the sons of the Emperor would remain loyal. Not all would accept his rule. Far across the stars, shadows deepened, and strange dreams spread. And back on Caliban, Luther stood at the center of a growing storm. The world was quiet, too quiet. The people had peace, but peace can be fragile. Some of the men who once served the Lion now whispered of purpose, lost. They wondered why they were not at the front, fighting for the Imperium. They looked at the stars and saw themselves forgotten. Luther tried to keep them steady. He reminded them of duty and patience, but even he could feel the pull. Something had shifted, deep and invisible, like the quiet before a storm or the stillness before a fall. The Lion did not return, not yet, and so Caliban waited. Let us move closer now, into the heart of the tension. The lights in the sky have grown brighter, but so have the shadows beneath. The line between loyalty and doubt is thin, and once it breaks, nothing is the same again. Time moved in strange ways on Caliban. The stars above looked the same each night. The forests still whispered with wind through the high trees, but something beneath the roots of the world had started to shift. The war in the wider galaxy continued to rage. More worlds were brought into the Imperium. More battles were fought. But here, on this quiet world once filled with monsters, the battles had stopped. The danger was gone. Only silence remained. Luther walked the ancient halls with a quiet step. He spoke with commanders and saw to the training of recruits. He read reports from orbit and listened to Vox messages sent from distant battlefields. Some of them came from the Lion himself. They were short and cold. These messages spoke of success, of hard-won victories, but they never mentioned Caliban. Not once did they speak of the old bond that had once joined the two men. That silence, more than the words themselves, began to settle into Luther's thoughts like dust across stone. The warriors left behind with Luther were loyal. They remembered the days of hunting monsters, the cries of victory in the forest, and the pride of wearing armor shaped from the teachings of the Order. But many of them now felt lost. They trained day after day. They waited for orders that never came. The great starships in orbit moved supplies and recruits, But they carried no glory, no stories of battle to be shared. These men had been made for war, but war had passed them by. Luther never raised his voice. He kept calm and steady, showing no signs of doubt. But even in his silence, his mind began to wander. He had always believed in the lion, always trusted in the emperor's plan. But now he could not help but ask what place he had in that plan. If he had done everything asked of him, why had he been left behind? Why was Caliban only a stepping stone and not a home for greatness? Outside the fortress, Caliban's people had begun to change as well. The cities had grown brighter. The roads were stronger. The air smelled cleaner. With the great beast gone and the forest cut back, life became easier. And with ease came boredom. The stories of the past, once filled with danger and victory, were now only tales told to children. People had started to forget what it meant to fight. Some wondered why the Imperium needed so much control. Others questioned the strength of a rule that sent its best men away and left only watchers behind. A few voices began to speak louder than others. They were careful at first, quiet, thoughtful, and polite. They spoke in council chambers and training yards. They asked simple things. Why are we not out there? Why are we always waiting? Why does the lion trust only himself? These words did not sound like rebellion. They sounded like curiosity, like reason. But they carried something deeper, something that grew each time they were spoken. Luther did not start the whispers, but he did not silence them either. He began to meet more often with those who felt forgotten. He listened when they spoke of the lion's pride and of the unfair distance that had formed between Caliban and the Legion. He agreed when they said the world had changed, but not for the better. He saw that the people trusted him more than ever, and though he did not say it aloud, he began to wonder if maybe the lion had made a mistake. The warp storms were not helping. Across the galaxy, strange things had begun to happen. Ships disappeared in travel. Communications broke down. Messages came late or not at all. The Imperium struggled to keep its order, and in this storm, the cracks in trust widened. For many years, Caliban had waited. Now it began to stir. There were those who saw visions in their sleep, dreams filled with fire and ruin, shadows falling across the sky. Some believed these were warnings from the warp. Others called them tricks of the mind. But what mattered most was how these dreams made people feel. They fed the quiet sense that something had been lost, that something had been taken from them, that perhaps the Emperor was not watching as closely as before. Luther became a symbol, not of rebellion, not yet, but of strength left behind, of potential unfulfilled. He still trained warriors, still honored the signs of the Legion, but he began to speak in a different way. He reminded his men of the early days, before the Emperor, before the great ships. He spoke of the forests, the code of the Order, and the pride they had before the stars reached down to claim them. And his words found hearts that were ready to listen. The lion, far away, had no idea how deep the change had gone. His focus was locked on war, on victory, on keeping the Imperium whole. He had grown into a leader shaped by the needs of the wider galaxy. But in doing so, he had left behind the roots that once gave him balance. He had forgotten the soil from which he had first risen. When reports came that Caliban was becoming distant, he took notice. When he heard that Luther was training more warriors than needed, he sent warnings. But the warp made those messages slow, and by the time they arrived, the gap had already grown wide. Luther received the lion's words with a calm expression. He nodded, he obeyed, but inside he felt the cold edge of rejection once again. His warriors felt it too. The warnings did not bring fear, they brought anger. And in that anger, something old and dangerous began to return. The forests of Caliban had once hidden beasts with sharp claws and twisted minds, but now the real danger did not walk on four legs or hide in the shadows. It stood in the open, dressed in armor and speaking calmly. It believed it had been wronged. It believed it had been forgotten. And belief is a powerful thing. Now let us return to the stars above. The lion has begun his journey home. The war is not yet over, but something calls him back. He does not yet know what waits for him, but Caliban is no longer the place he left behind. The soil has shifted. The roots have turned inward. The storm is almost here. The war had left its mark on the stars. Whole systems had burned. Empires that once ruled proudly had fallen into ash. The emperor no longer walked among his armies. The great crusade was over, and in its place had come something darker. The Horus heresy had torn brother from brother and shattered the dream of unity. When the dust began to settle, many primarchs were gone. Some were dead, some had vanished, and some had betrayed everything they once believed in. The lion had fought hard in the final days. He had chased the traitor forces across broken paths and dying stars. He had struck fast and without pause, trying to cut out the disease before it spread, but he had not made it to Terra in time. The final battle had come and gone without him, and when it ended, the Emperor had been wounded beyond repair. The galaxy would never be the same. With the heresy done, the lion turned back to Caliban. He had been gone for many years. He did not know what he would find. He remembered the forests, the halls, the quiet strength of the knights. He remembered Luther and the bond they had once shared. He hoped it might still be there. But as the fleet approached orbit, strange signals filled the void. Ships that should have welcomed the lion instead turned away. Vox channels filled with static. Defenses that should have stood down now pointed toward the sky. Something was wrong. The lion gave the order to descend. Drop pods fell through the atmosphere. Stormbirds swept across the surface. The fortress monastery loomed large over the land, but there was no welcome, no cheers, no salutes, only silence, followed by gunfire. The battle began without warning. Loyalists who had returned with the lion met resistance from those they had once trained beside. The forests around the fortress were filled with fire and smoke. Ancient stone cracked as bolts tore through its walls. The knights of Caliban, once proud protectors, now fought against their own. It was not a war for conquest. It was a war for the soul of a world. Luther stood at the center of it all. He had watched the skies for days before the lion arrived. He had known this moment would come. The years had changed him. The doubts that once whispered in his mind had become truths he no longer questioned. He believed the lion had abandoned them. He believed the Imperium had used them. He believed that Caliban deserved better. And now he would make it happen. Those who stood with him believed it too. Many were former knights, now hardened warriors who had trained in secret, preparing for this very day. They wore symbols that looked like the past, but had taken new meaning. They called themselves the true sons of Caliban. They did not see themselves as traitors. They saw themselves as the ones who had been left behind and who now chose to rise. The lion did not speak much as the battle raged. He moved through the halls with steady purpose. His blades sang through the air. His warriors followed close behind, their armor marked by the long war. But even as they fought to reclaim the fortress, there was something heavy in his step. This was not a war he had wanted. He had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that Luther would have understood, that Caliban would have remained loyal, that their past could still be saved. But the past was gone. The battle reached the inner sanctum. There, deep beneath the highest tower, the lion found Luther. No words could change what had already begun. No call for reason could undo the years of silence. They stood facing each other, once brothers, now enemies. The chamber around them shook with the force of battle. The sky above was filled with lightning drawn from the warp. The air cracked with unseen power. They fought. It was not a battle of strategy. It was a storm of fury, pain, and sorrow. They moved like forces beyond human reach. Each strike shook the stone. Each moment passed like an age. Neither gave ground, neither spoke. But within their silence, whole histories were exchanged. The weight of betrayal, the memory of trust, the cost of pride. And then the world broke. Whether it was caused by the clash of such mighty beings or something older awakened by the battle, the warp tore open. A storm of energy burst forth from the heart of Caliban. The planet screamed as it began to come apart. Whole regions fell into fire. Mountains cracked open. The fortress shattered into dust and flame. Luther fell, not by blade but by grief. At the last moment, something inside him broke. He saw what had become of his choices. He saw the ruin he had helped shape, and in that moment, he collapsed, not dead, but broken. The warp storm pulled him into a place beyond time, where no one could reach him. The lion, wounded and silent, vanished as well. Some say he was taken by the warp. Others believe he entered a deep sleep, hidden away until a time yet to come. The traitors who had stood with Luther were swept into the storm. They were scattered across the galaxy. Pulled through time and space, they became known only as the Fallen. Wherever they landed, they brought confusion and mystery. Some still believed they had done right. Others knew the truth too late. But all were marked. All became hunted. Caliban was gone. All that remained was a fragment, a broken shard of the world, now called the Rock. The Dark Angels turned it into their fortress. They carried it with them through space. It held their secrets and their pain. They told no one what had happened, not even their closest allies. To the rest of the Imperium, Caliban had simply fallen to warp storms. The Dark Angels said nothing more, but among themselves they remembered, and they vowed never to forget. What began as a proud legion became something else, something darker. A brotherhood of silence, hiding their shame behind oaths and masks. They became the unforgiven, and their mission was set. They would hunt the fallen. They would find each one, and they would make them answer for the past, even if it took forever. Now let your thoughts settle as we drift forward once more. The fires of Caliban have gone out. The smoke has cleared. But the story is far from over. The Dark Angels now walk a road made not of glory but of penance. Let us follow that path and see where it leads. After Caliban shattered, the Dark Angels were no longer the same. The world they had come from was gone. The past they once carried with pride had become a shadow, and the truth, known only to a few, could never be spoken. Among the stars, they still wore their green armor. They still fought for the Imperium. But something had changed deep inside them. They no longer fought only for duty. Now they fought to cover a wound that never healed. The surviving Dark Angels took the broken pieces of their homeworld and turned them into something new. From the remains of the fortress monastery, they built the Rock. It was more than a space station. It was a place of silence, where the truth could be buried deep behind walls of stone and oath. On the outside, the Rock served as their mobile base. It moved between war zones and helped the Imperium where needed. But inside, hidden chambers and sealed halls held something else. They held secrets. The truth of Luther's betrayal and the scattering of the fallen was known only to a small number. These were the highest leaders within the chapter. They formed the inner circle. This group did not change with the passing of years. Those who joined it had to go through intense trials, and once inside, they were never the same again. The knowledge they held was a burden. It shaped how they saw the galaxy, how they led the chapter, and how they judged others. The inner circle gave the Dark Angels a hidden purpose. Their public role was to serve the Imperium. Their secret task was to find the fallen. These were the former brothers who had stood with Luther during the battle for Caliban. Many of them had been swept away by the warp storm. They now wandered the galaxy, confused and lost. Some had forgotten their past. Others remembered it too well. Each one, no matter how far they had fallen, was considered a stain that had to be removed. To the Dark Angels, this mission was not about revenge. It was about redemption, not for the fallen alone, but for the chapter itself. The stain of betrayal could not be washed away with time. It had to be erased piece by piece, one name at a time. Only when every fallen angel had been found and judged would the Dark Angels be free of their shame. They called themselves the Unforgiven. This name was not spoken in pride. It was a reminder. They had failed once. They had let their home fall into darkness. They had lost their brothers, their honor, and their peace. Now they carried that weight in silence, hidden behind rituals and traditions that even other Space Marines could not understand. As time passed, the First Legion was split into smaller chapters. This was a rule made after the heresy, meant to prevent any one force from becoming too strong. But the Dark Angels found a way to stay connected. The new chapters that came from their bloodline remained tied to the same secret. These included groups like the Angels of Absolution, Angels of Redemption, and others. Together they formed a brotherhood that spanned across the stars. All of them knew the truth. All of them shared the same burden. All of them were part of the Unforgiven. This hidden bond gave them power. It also gave them fear. The Dark Angels became more secretive than any other chapter. They kept their records sealed. They allowed no one to watch their rituals. They trusted no one outside their own. Even among themselves, knowledge was given only in pieces. A battle brother might serve for centuries and never know what truly happened on Caliban. Only when the inner circle chose him, only when they judged him ready, would the truth be revealed. Some could not carry the truth. A few broke under the weight of it. Others became more driven, more focused, more distant. The line between duty and obsession began to blur. To support their secret war, the chapter created special roles. The interrogator chaplains were trained to capture and question the fallen. They wore black robes and carried symbols of repentance. Their voices were calm and cold. Their chambers were filled with echoes. They did not seek information for its own sake. They sought confession. They wanted the fallen to admit their betrayal, to speak it aloud, and to ask for forgiveness. Some of the fallen did. Most did not. The Raven Wing, the fast-moving strike force of the chapter, also played a key part. They rode into battle on jet-black bikes and fast skimmers. They hunted the signs of the fallen, moving quickly and without warning. When a fallen was found, the Raven Wing moved first. They struck hard and fast, often before anyone else even knew why they had arrived. There were moments when their actions confused their allies. The Dark Angels would change course without reason. They would leave a battle unfinished to follow a lead no one else could see. They would take prisoners without explanation and vanish into the stars. But they never explained themselves. To the Imperium, they remained loyal. To themselves, they were on a mission that would not end until every piece of the past was accounted for. This life of silence came with a cost. The warriors of the chapter grew distant. Their eyes held memories they could not share. Their voices spoke in riddles. They followed orders without question, but their hearts held questions they could not ask. A young recruit might train for decades, learning the arts of war and the ways of the chapter. He might fight with honor and rise in rank, but he would still live in the dark. Only when the time came, only when he was chosen, would he be led into the inner chambers. There, the truth would be shown to him, and if he accepted it, he would carry it for the rest of his days. The Dark Angels called this enlightenment. Others might call it something else. It is easy to think of warriors as simple: armor, weapons, loyalty. But the Dark Angels were never simple. They were built on loss and shaped by silence. Their greatest enemy was not always the one standing before them. Sometimes it was the memory of the one who had once stood beside them. Now let us follow the path deeper. The stars are wide, and the fallen are many. Each one carries a part of the story. Each one is a mirror of what could have been. And the hunt is far from over. Across the stars, battles rise and fall like waves on a dark sea. Armies clash for planets, resources, or survival. Most of these wars are loud and fast. The Dark Angels fight in many of them, wearing their colors proudly and serving the Imperium as any loyal chapter should. But not all their work is seen by others. Much of it takes place in the quiet, behind the battle lines, beneath the surface of what most believe. This is where the hunt begins. The fallen are not easy to find. They do not move as a group or follow one plan. When the warp storm scattered them after the fall of Caliban, each one landed on a different world, in a different time, under different skies. Some became warlords. Others lived in hiding. A few tried to forget everything and start over. But the Dark Angels never stopped looking for them. The signs of a fallen presence can be small: a strange figure in black armor, a warrior who speaks in an old Calibanite tongue, a symbol carved into a ruined wall. These are not enough by themselves, but they become pieces of a trail, and once that trail is found, the Raven Wing begins to move. The Raven Wing is not just fast, they are precise. Every rider knows his place. Every movement is sharp and silent. They ride black bikes and fly fast skimmers, moving like shadows across broken ground. When they strike, they do not aim to kill unless they must. Their task is to capture. The fallen must be brought back to the rock, alive if possible, so the interrogator chaplains can do their work. These chaplains are trained for more than prayer and battle. They are the keepers of the chapter's deepest secrets. They wear robes that cover their armor and masks shaped like skulls. Their voices are steady and cold. They speak with purpose, not passion. When a fallen is brought before them, the chamber is sealed. No one speaks of what happens inside. Only the chaplain and the prisoner remain. Sometimes the questioning takes hours, other times days. What the chaplain seeks is not just confession, it is truth. He wants to hear the fallen admit what happened on Caliban. He wants them to name Luther, to speak of the betrayal, to face what they once denied. Only then can the judgment be passed. And only then can the Dark Angels feel they have taken one small step toward redemption. But not all the fallen are willing. Many refuse to speak. Some believe they did no wrong. Others know what they did but still defend it. A few even try to twist the truth, saying the lion was the one who abandoned them, that it was the Imperium that betrayed Caliban. These moments are the hardest, not because the chaplain doubts, but because a part of him understands. The Dark Angels carry this pain quietly. They do not share it with outsiders. Other chapters might see them as cold or distant. Some wonder why they act with such secrecy, but few ever suspect the true reason. The Dark Angels are not just hunting the past, they are trying to erase it, one name at a time. There are times when a fallen is found in the middle of a larger war. This creates problems. The Dark Angels must act without revealing their goal. They might shift the direction of a whole campaign to get closer to their target. They might change their mission orders at the last moment. To their allies, it looks like strange strategy, but to the Dark Angels, it is necessary. They do not explain. They do not ask permission. They act. In rare cases, the fallen have built power. One might lead a group of traitors. Another might command a hidden cult. When this happens, the Dark Angels must fight their way in. These battles are not always clean. Collateral damage can be high. Other Imperial forces might question their methods, but still, the Dark Angels stay silent. They would rather lose favor than reveal their shame. This secret war is old. It has lasted for thousands of years, and still there is no end in sight. The fallen continue to appear, scattered across the galaxy like ghosts. Some are caught and judged. Others vanish before the Raven Wing can arrive. A few even fight back with knowledge of their own, using what they remember of the Legion to outmaneuver their hunters. Among all the fallen, one stands apart. His name is Cypher. No one knows where he came from. No one knows exactly what he wants. He wears ancient armor, marked with symbols of the past. He carries a blade that looks like the lion's sword, though he never draws it. He appears without warning, moves through war zones with ease, and vanishes before he can be caught. The Dark Angels have chased him across stars and centuries, always close, never close enough. Cypher never speaks when captured. He never answers questions. He never tries to explain. And yet, some believe that he is not like the others. He has done things that seem helpful. He has stopped greater threats. He has warned Imperial forces of danger. He acts with purpose, but no one can see the full shape of it. The Dark Angels fear what he represents. He is a mirror they cannot break. He is a reminder of the past they cannot silence. Some believe he is trying to reach Terra. Some believe he wants to speak to the Emperor. But if he does, no one knows what will be said. The hunt continues. For the Dark Angels, this is not a task with an end. It is a cycle. Find the fallen. Capture them. Bring them to the rock. Listen for the truth. Judge. Repeat. The hope is that one day, the last of the fallen will be caught, that the final name will be crossed from the list, that the chapter will no longer be unforgiven. But that day has not come, and so they ride. Let us walk with them a little longer. The stars are still wide, the shadows still move, and within the silence, something stirs. Time does not move the same way for all things. In the galaxy of Warhammer, where stars burn and empires fall, some truths drift in silence for ages. Some memories wait in places beyond time, and some figures are not lost but resting. Among those hidden away, one has been missed most of all. The lion, first of the Emperor's sons, has been gone for 10,000 years. His story did not end with Caliban. It only became quiet. The Dark Angels never spoke of him. They did not share hopes. They did not build shrines. They held his name close, hidden behind their silence. They remembered him not as a hero, but as a wound. His disappearance after the battle with Luther marked the start of their shame. And for generations, they fought with the hope that someday their sins might be washed away. But even in their deepest chambers, none expected the lion to return. Then something changed. The galaxy had grown darker. The Imperium had suffered. New threats had risen, and the warp had split the stars once more. In this chaos, whispers began to move. Whispers of a figure walking the void. A warrior clad in dark armor. A presence that brought silence to battlefields and calm to storms. At first, few believed. Then more stories came. And then the truth followed. The lion had awakened. He had slept deep within the rock, hidden not just by stone but by time itself. His body had rested while his mind drifted through the echoes of what had been. He had seen the rise of shadows. He had felt the pain of those who hunted the fallen. And when the galaxy cried out again, he opened his eyes. He did not return in fire or thunder. He walked in silence, carrying the weight of his legion on his shoulders. He did not seek command. He did not ask for banners. He moved with purpose, but that purpose was not conquest. It was clarity. The lion had watched the world move on without him. Now he had returned to see what could still be saved. He did not return to the chapter as a king. He returned as a guide. When he met his sons again, they were no longer the warriors he had once led. They were colder, quieter, shaped by centuries of secrets. They welcomed him with awe, but also with questions they could not ask aloud. The lion saw this and did not judge. He understood what they had become. He saw the burden they carried, and though he did not speak it aloud, he shared that burden. The lion had known Luther better than any. He had felt the weight of betrayal in its purest form. But now, after so much time, he also understood what had caused it. The silence, the distance, the pride. He saw that the mistakes of the past had not belonged to one man alone. They had been shared by all. And now, with time as a mirror, he began to see the path forward. The fallen were still scattered. The hunt still continued. But something had shifted. The lion did not speak of vengeance. He did not tell his sons to stop, but in his presence, there was a calm that changed how they moved. He reminded them of what they once were, knights who fought for others, soldiers who followed honor, not only orders. His words were soft, his steps were sure, and his eyes held memories too heavy for most to bear. The dark angels followed him not because they were ordered to, but because they saw something they had forgotten. A light not of fire, but of purpose. The lion did not erase the past. He carried it with him. And in doing so, he showed that redemption is not always won through silence or punishment. Sometimes it begins by opening a door that has been locked for too long. Not all welcomed this change. Within the inner circle, voices clashed. Some feared what his presence might mean. Others hoped it might bring the truth into light. But the lion did not force his will. He moved among them like a shadow made from memory. And slowly those who followed began to feel the weight of secrecy shift, if only slightly. The Imperium saw his return as a sign, a lost son restored, a warrior for a new age. But the Dark Angels knew better. He was not a banner to be waved. He was not a prize. He was a reminder of what had been lost, of what might still be found. Cypher remained at large, still moving through the stars, still carrying his silent blade. And though the lion had returned, the final chapter had not yet been written. The hunt continued. The burden remained. But now something felt different. There was no promise of peace. There was no end in sight, but there was a presence. The lion no longer slept. For those who dream of the past, his return offers no clear answer. But for those who walk with the unforgiven, it may be enough to know that they no longer walk alone. The road is still long. The stars are still cold, but the silence has broken. And in the space between one breath and the next, hope stirs. Let it rest there now. Let the green-robed warriors drift into thought beneath the stars. Let the rock sail slowly through the void. Let the truth remain hidden a little longer, not out of fear, but out of patience. For in time, all stories return to light, even the ones written in shadow. Now the tale has ended, not with thunder, not with final words carved in stone, but with quiet footsteps fading into the dark halls of memory. You have walked through forests once filled with monsters, seen the rise of a warrior raised among trees, and watched as silence became a legacy too heavy for words. You have felt the weight of a chapter that wears green not for pride, but for penance. A legion that lost its home, its brothers, and its peace. And still, it fights. In this galaxy of endless war, the Dark Angels move differently. Their war is not always seen. Their mission is not always understood. They hunt not only enemies, but the ghosts of their own past. And in doing so, they carry something no other chapter dares to hold: the burden of truth. Yet even burden can become a path, even silence can speak, and even the unforgiven may find peace, not through victory, but through understanding. The lion sleeps no more. The stars still turn, and the rock sails on, holding secrets and hope in equal measure. Let that image stay with you now. A ship made of stone drifting slowly through the stars. A warrior cloaked in shadow, watching with calm eyes. A chapter still hunting, still healing, still waiting for the day when the last name is spoken and the silence can end. Until then, let the darkness be soft. Let the stars glow gently, and let the story of the Dark Angels rest here beside you as you drift into sleep.